Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, and started a mass protest which led to the end of segregation on public transport. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German Lutheran pastor who was consistently outspoken in his criticism of Nazism in Germany. Preferring to stay in the country of his birth, he was eventually arrested and executed in 1945. During World War I, Edith Cavell, a nurse in Belgium, was arrested and executed for helping Allied servicemen escape back to England. Shortly before her execution, she said, "Patriotism is not enough. I must have no hatred or bitterness towards anyone."
He climbs on up the hill, on the rock on which he stands, looks back at the crowd, looks down at his hands, and he says, "I am a difference maker. Oh, I am the difference maker. Oh, I am the only one who speaks to him, and I am the friendliest of friends of God." He climbs on up the hill, on the rock on which he stands, and looks back at the crowd, and looks down at his hands, and he says, "Oh, I am the difference maker. Oh, I am the difference maker. Oh, I am the only one who speaks to him, and I am the friendliest of friends of God."
Malala Yousafzai, a Pakistani schoolgirl, defied threats of the Taliban to campaign for the right to education. She survived being shot in the head by the Taliban and has become a global advocate for human rights, women's rights, and the right to education. Maximilian Kolbe was a Polish Franciscan priest. During the Polish occupation, he was arrested twice by the Nazis, but continued to offer shelter to the Jews and Polish refugees. In 1941, he was sent to Auschwitz concentration camp, where he volunteered to take the place of a man condemned to death, showing great courage, faith, and dignity.
I am on the fence about nearly everything I've seen, and I have felt the fire be put out by too much gasoline. We are helpless conversation with a man who says he cares a lot. It's a passive confrontation about who might throw a punch or not. We are all transgressors, we're all sinners, we're all astronauts. So if you're beating death, but shut up if you're not, 'cause I am a difference maker. Oh, I am the only one who speaks to him, and I am the friendliest of friends of God. Oh, I am the difference maker. Oh, I am the only one who speaks to him, and I am the friendliest of friends of God.
In 1996, hundreds gathered to protest a KKK rally in Michigan. They chased down a white man wearing a Confederate flag t-shirt, knocked him down, and started hitting and kicking him. An 18-year-old girl, Keisha Thomas, threw herself on top of him to protect him from the angry mob.
Oh, I am the difference maker. Oh, I am the only one that speaks to him, and I am the friendliest of friends of God. Oh, I am the difference maker. Oh, I am the only hands of God.
Morning. Hey, did you guys catch the moment that Matthias looked over at me for inspiration in that little oops, I forgot the lyrics moment, and then he sang powerfully after that, so you're welcome. You know what the benefit of speaking is? Like, I can forget things and you'll never know because you don't know. So I do it all the time. Welcome. So glad you guys are here today for a day where it's finally not raining outside. We need a hallelujah for that. By the way, if you don't know, I'll mention this again at the end of the morning. We are having a party in the green space outside. Hopefully you came prepared to come back for that later. It is after the second service, so we would love to have you come back and join us, but just time to hang out, to be a family, to be a community, to be in relationship with one another, so that's going to happen later today. But before we get to that, and so many other things to let you know about, this morning is all about that. It's all about being a difference maker. We have been in a series for the last number of weeks. Today we wrap it up and conclude it called Heroes, where we're looking at some people in the Bible who, in many regards, some were heroes and some were kind of anti-heroes. And in either situation, whether it's people that stepped into what God had for them or even sometimes people that ran away from what God had for them, God did what God wanted to do and used their lives to make incredible difference, to make an incredible impact, to be difference makers. And this morning we're going to look at a couple, Priscilla and Aquila, a husband and a wife, who their lives were completely upended with circumstances outside of their control. They weren't looking to be difference makers at all. They were looking in many regards, how do we survive a world that's flipping upside down around us and having direct impact on our lives. And as they continued to pursue who God was and who he had made them to be, ended up having an incredible impact. But this morning, before we go there, I do want to just take a second. We're going to take up our offering. We're going to do this a little bit earlier today because today I'm going to introduce you our speaker in just a minute, who will not be me this morning. So I want to take this away from them and not have them do this because this is kind of our moment together as a family. But this is one of the things that's important for us as a church and a community, is this time where we give and we open up, not just with our time and our energy and our service and our hearts, but also just with the resources God's given us. Yesterday, I was able to watch a Channel 7 news article about a church down in Detroit called Motor City Church, which is a church that we had the opportunity and privilege to partner with just on the other side of COVID. For those of you that don't know, one of the parts of our heartbeat as a church is to help other churches get started. And so we were a part of helping Motor City get launched, and they have just done incredible work in and around the Detroit area. And just being able to watch it and even watch the news start to pay attention and go, something unique about these people, something different about these people, and not highlighting them for the sake of their own glory, but highlighting the work that they're doing that's making an impact for the kingdom and in the region. We get to do that because of your generosity. So I always say thank you. I'll always say thank you, but I will also always invite you into this. I think if you're not a part of the fullness of what it means to be on mission with us as a church, and this is only a part of it, but it is a part, man, be a part of this with us. Only because we're really making an impact. And I'd say this, if you're a part of giving here and you're a part of this with us, and you ever feel like we're not about making an impact, we're more about ourselves, we're more about our own glory, or we're more about our own stuff, then stop giving and give it somewhere else. I'll give you a list of 10 places worth doing it with. But as long as this is a place committed to the kingdom, to Jesus, to reaching people, to love and the resources of God, then let's partner together and get that done. So this is how we do it, and so thank you. This is usually where I realize I didn't tell you about the buckets that came by because they've already gone by. So well done, you figured it out without my help. So this morning, I do want to introduce our speaker to you, who is, I will just tell you in all sincerity, of all the people on this planet, this is the single most influential person in my entire life. It is my wife, Nicole, who has had more profound impact on me than any other human being. She has helped to shape not only who I am, but I believe who God is continuing to make me be. This woman sees me like nobody else sees me. She is my biggest fan. She sits down there every single week when I'm up on this stage, and it's her looks sometimes that keep me going. It's also her looks that make me realize I shared something I wasn't supposed to share. But she is my absolute favorite, and it's my honor to be able to introduce her to you this morning. She spoke many times around Kensington, but not on a Sunday morning yet. This will be the first time. And so for me to be able to sit under her teaching today with you is going to be a privilege. So love you, babe.
Wow, good morning. Yes, this is my first time up here. I have been up here with Susan once and once with Craig. Are you going to grab? I'll grab it. You're going to grab it? All right, great. So I have been up here once with Susan, once with Craig speaking, and this morning was a morning that Craig asked me if I would like to come and share a word with you on my own. So here I am. I took 2 days off work this week to prepare, and I just want you to know, I'm like you in many ways, right? I work all week, and then I come in here, and I say this with all my heart, we're all called to ministry. We're all called by God to do something in the church. And so today, I get the opportunity to speak and to share with you something that God has been working on with me. So I want to start this morning by grounding us in a few really high-level, deep questions, things that I think all of us as human beings struggle with. And some of these questions are this: do you believe God orders your steps? Do you believe he is in control? Do you trust him enough to obey him even when what is happening is overwhelming or life-threatening? I mean, this is really the crux of our lives, right? Is God in control, and can I trust him with my life? As we think about the heroes and anti-heroes that we've been learning about over the past few weeks, they all wrestled with these questions. Is God in control? And can I trust him with my life? So today, we're going to talk about a couple. Their name is Priscilla and Aquila. They're a power couple who had a journey wrought with challenges and a lot of change. And that journey just brought them on an amazing adventure. So I'm going to start this morning and pray. Jesus, we are grateful to be in your presence. We are grateful to be here together as a people, ready to hear your word, ready to listen. Jesus, I pray that you would help us to be present in this moment. And whatever we brought in today, whatever has been happening in our lives this week, God, I pray that you would hold it right now, that we would know that you are in control. You are on your throne, and you are seeking a people who are willing to listen. God, I pray some of us came in here this morning wanting to hear from you. Some of us don't know if we want to hear from you. God, I pray that you would speak. And I pray, God, that you would help us all to take our place in the world around us. In Jesus' name, amen. So every time I do get up here, I want to remind myself and you, when we read scripture, these were real people, right? They're flesh and blood. They have emotions. They're physical human beings. They have ailments. They have mental processes. They're thinking people. They have love, happiness, sadness, weariness, everything that makes us human. And that's the joy of the Bible. It's not just an operational manual for how we live our life. Listen, I'm a policy and procedure kind of girl, but this is a story of real human beings who are on life journeys. And this morning we're talking about Priscilla and Aquila, a couple mentioned somewhat remotely in the New Testament. After the time of Jesus' death and resurrection, so Jesus has gone back to heaven, and right when the disciples and Paul were bringing the gospel of Jesus Christ to the world. They're never mentioned alone. Priscilla and Aquila are never mentioned alone. Even this morning, we were going to talk about a little bit about Priscilla, but I couldn't go that direction. I had to talk about Priscilla and Aquila because they've always been on a mission together. The words that I want you to hear woven throughout this message, the story of their lives, are these: trust, obey, give your life away. So this is one of those times when I'm going to ask for a little bit of group participation. I'm asking you. I'm not voluntelling you. We're going to say these words together: trust, obey, give your life away. So here's a hard question, a sensitive one, and this is not something that you have to say out loud. But has anybody ever been expelled? from school, which you don't have to say that one out loud, or a concert or a stadium or anything. I'm sure there's some in this room who've been expelled. But in general, there are rule followers and rule breakers. And Craig has left the room for this moment, but I'm a rule follower. Any guess what Craig is? Okay, yeah, we all know what Craig is, right? Okay. So I attended a really small private Christian school. My graduating class was 9. So I was the valedictorian of 9. I mean, that's not really saying much, right? Thank you. Jesse's the only one who clapped for me. And I was never in trouble, like never in the principal's office. I'd never seen the inside of the principal's office until my senior year, when I started school that day and we went to we were going to have Bible class. And we got to Bible class, and they announced that what we were going to study was when Jesus would return. Now, if you don't know this is basically the premise of this little story, is nobody knows when Jesus will return, okay? Nobody knows. In fact, when Jesus was on the earth, he said only the Father knows. He didn't even know when he would return. But I just want you to know that for 5 years, every Bible class, every year, was when Jesus would return. Okay, there's a weird Christian school I'm just telling you, it's a weird Christian school, okay? And so I'm in this class, we get there, and I was not attached to the church of that school. I just went to the school. And so in my one moment when I was gonna be a rule breaker, I said, I'm not doing it. And my teacher's like, Nicole, did you speak up? Did you say you're not gonna do something? No, I'm not gonna do it. And I said, can we just read like a book of the Bible and just like write a book report on it? Like, can we just read like Esther or Ruth or something? And he was like, no, you're gonna write this paper. And so I said, I'm not gonna do it. So he said, go to the principal's office. And so I went to the principal's office and I sat down and he wasn't there. And then eventually he walked in and he looked at me and I looked at him. And he's like, this is not what's going on here. And I said, Mr. D, I cannot write another paper. I cannot take one more class on when Jesus will return because, Mr. D, do you know when Jesus will return? And he said, no. And I said, okay, neither do I. And I'm now going into my 6th year of writing papers on when Jesus will return, and I just can't. And he said, so what do you want to do? And I said, I guess I'll just write a book report on Job. And so he was like, great, go back to class. And that was it. That was the end of my stint in hot water, okay? But this story about Priscilla and Aquila they're experiencing a real expulsion. This is a traumatic moment when they have had to flee Rome. They've had to run, maybe run for their lives. It was a time in history with Claudius when he had expelled all Jewish people from Rome. And it takes off like this, Acts 18, 1-5. After this, Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. And there he met a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had ordered all Jews to leave Rome. And Paul went to see them, and because he was a tent maker, as they were, he stayed and worked with them. Every Sabbath, he reasoned in the synagogue, trying to persuade Jews and Greeks. And when Silas and Timothy, that was a couple other disciples, came from Macedonia, Paul devoted himself exclusively to preaching, testifying to the Jews that Jesus was the Messiah. We drop down later on to verse 11, and we learn that Paul stayed in Corinth for 1.5 years. That's a really long time for Paul to stay anywhere, okay? Here they meet the Apostle Paul, one of the greatest preachers along with Jesus and John the Baptist to ever live. There are several things to know about Paul. He was single. He never married. He took companions or friends with him wherever he would travel. You'll hear him always in his letters saying thank you to the people who were with him or who held him in the middle of difficulty. I would imagine there was some loneliness and isolation in his life. He got thrown out of a bunch of cities. He was always in hot water for preaching. He was stoned, beaten, shipwrecked, jailed, everything hard you can imagine on the mission to bring the gospel to people. And he would go to these non-Jewish cities and preach about Jesus. People would listen and their hearts would be open. And then he would start churches in those cities. Some of them you'll recognize. There's Corinth, Corinthians, Ephesus, Ephesians, Galatia, Galatians, right? And where Paul would often work, where he would go. I mean, he was a tent maker, just like Priscilla and Aquila. So, and he did this because he didn't want to burden people with paying to support his needs. And so on this particular journey, he comes in contact with Priscilla and Aquila. Now, this is what we know about Priscilla and Aquila through some study of the text, but also historical study. They're always mentioned in the Bible together. I already said that. Aquila is Jewish, but Priscilla's heritage is unknown. And they have fled from Rome through Italy to Corinth and started their business back up. Not sure how long that journey took or how much they brought with them. They worked together in a trade making tents, which is more like stitching leather. Don't think REI, fabric tents, right? It's labor intensive. There's needles, hooks. It's a manual job. And this was a rare time where a woman is mentioned in the Bible working alongside her husband in a trade and doesn't have a domestic role in any of the passages in Scripture. And they meet Paul and they open their house and their business to him. So they allow him to work with them when he was in Corinth. And for all intents and purposes in that moment, he was just a recent stranger. What we don't know is when they themselves came to hear and believe the good news about Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, believed and received God's Spirit. It could have been while Paul was with them. It could have been on their way from Rome. We don't know why it isn't mentioned, whether they did or didn't have a family, or why Priscilla doesn't stay home and tend her house instead of working. We don't know, actually, if Priscilla wrote the book of Hebrews, as some scholars think she did. And we don't know why Priscilla's name is mentioned before Aquila's. But they were both hardworking people who have already encountered significant difficulty in their lives. So they get to spend at least 1.5 years with Paul. And I don't know about you, but to get to spend all that time with Paul would be the coolest thing in the world, even though he was not the most well-loved person around. And then Paul invites them to travel with him to Ephesus. Now, I just want you to know, if I were them, okay, I would not want to move again. Certainly not move my business again. I mean, all those customers, you've regained your clientele from Rome to Corinth. You've now regained all those customers. And I wouldn't want to start over. I kind of like being comfortable. And as much as I say I like change, I don't love it, right? It's usually difficult and painful. I think most of us can say that. Usually when Craig has a great idea, my first response is, what? No. I'd like to say it's my fight or flight response, okay? If you know Craig, it's like my fight or flight response. But here, Priscilla and Aquila show faith and trust that God would provide wherever they were located. And another thing I'd love to point out here is that God used their tent-making jobs as a conduit for meeting Paul. You know, sometimes we minimize our secular jobs, right? I was thinking about this. Some of you are maybe a machinist. Some of you might be an engineer. Some of you could be in leadership of a company. Some of you are teachers. And we think God cannot use us as greatly as he does pastors and people in churches. But honestly, our secular jobs are a conduit by which God can bring the good news to the world. I've been in so many conversations over the past 1.5 years of working at a new company, and I can't believe how receptive people are to just hearing your story. And so when you see this moment, their tent-making skill has allowed them to come in contact with Paul. So later in the chapter we read, Paul stayed on in Corinth for some time, and then he left the brothers and sisters and sailed for Syria, accompanied by Priscilla and Aquila. Before he sailed, he had his hair cut off at Cenchreae because of a vow he had taken. They arrived at Ephesus, where Paul left Priscilla and Aquila. He himself went into the synagogue and reasoned with the Jews. Now, this is a funny part in the story to me of Priscilla and Aquila, okay? So Paul is like, hey, want to come with me on this super adventure? Like, this will be awesome. And they're like, okay, let's think about it. Okay, yes, let's go. This is going to be fun. And so Paul's like, okay, I got to get a haircut first. But after I get my haircut, we're going to get on this boat. We're just going to have a really fun trip. So they get to Ephesus, this is like, right, travel is not like by train or plane today, right? This has got to be weeks or months, I don't know. And then they get there, and Paul leaves them. I thought we were going to do this cool adventure, Paul, and then he's gone. And I can imagine I would have felt a bit abandoned. Or I would have said, you know what, this was fun going on this sailing trip with Paul, but he's really busy now. So let's just go back to Corinth, back to our tent-making trade. But the next thing we see is that they had a divine appointment with another big player in the story of bringing the good news of Jesus to the world. They meet Apollos, one of the leading evangelists in the Bible. In fact, there's another part in Scripture where there are people arguing about who is a better preacher, Paul or Apollos. So they meet Apollos, one of this leading evangelists in the Bible, but he isn't fully taught yet. He isn't fully seasoned. He has some missing parts of the story of Jesus. He needs their help to deepen his understanding of the truth. So we read again in Acts 18:24. Meanwhile, a Jew named Apollos, a native of Alexandria, came to Ephesus. He was a learned man with a thorough knowledge of the scriptures. He had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and he spoke with great fervor and taught about Jesus accurately, though he knew only the baptism of John. He began to speak boldly in the synagogue, and when Priscilla and Aquila heard him, they invited him to their home and explained to him the way of God more adequately. And when Apollos wanted to go to Achaia, the brothers and sisters encouraged him and wrote to the disciples there to welcome him. And when he arrived, he was a great help to those who by grace had believed, for he vigorously refuted his Jewish opponents in public debate, proving from the scriptures that Jesus was the Messiah. You can see here from Apollos' life that after spending time with Priscilla and Aquila, he is even more capable of defending and laying out the good news of Jesus to highly educated people. And Priscilla and Aquila's obedience led them to stay in Ephesus, pour into Apollos, and send him out on the next leg of his journey. Their choice to stay and be obedient gave them a part in Apollos' legacy. And so I just want to ask, in all these passages, what does this have to do with us, right? I think the first thing we can see is that the gospel was on the move. Even things that expelled people out of cities was being used by God for kingdom movement. God was in control, even when it didn't look like it. And I know we can say that for our own lives sometimes. Is God in control? I have a Greek Hebrew study Bible right here. This is what I usually use when I'm preparing to speak. And one of the things that it said in it, in Romans, this summary, is it explained a little bit about the dispersion of what happened in the church. And it says, the dispersion of the Jews had led to the establishing of a multitude of synagogues in the midst of heathenism throughout the Roman Empire. The apostles and many other converts to Christianity had ready access to these synagogues. And during that period, the polytheistic religion of the Roman Empire was becoming increasingly unpopular. And there is a great deal of evidence that many people became proselytes to Judaism or began to worship the one true God. These individuals were the most receptive to the message of the gospel, since they didn't have the hostile predisposition of the Jews and were already convinced that polytheism was false. You know, I was reading through this and I was just thinking, I hear so many people today say that this time in our history is so wicked. It's so terrible. We're such an unchristian nation. And yet we look at what was happening in the Roman Empire during that time, where polytheism, that means many gods, people worshiping many gods, was prevalent. All kinds of worldliness was prevalent. And yet people were finding the world wanting. I say that over and over again when I'm talking to people today. Yes, the world is bad. Yes, but some people have to taste and see that the world is wanting before their hearts are open. Maybe this is the moment when hearts are open, are truly being open with the world around us. Well, Priscilla and Aquila's expulsion from Rome projected them to a place where they joined the movement. They saw that God was on the move in the life of Paul. They were able to hear and take in the message of the gospel, and they trusted God as they moved, that he was in control. And God is still on the move. We talk about God's kingdom. He is moving in the world. He is moving around us, and we just have to trust him and move with him. The second thing we can see from Priscilla and Aquila is that they regularly chose to move out of their comfort zones. They're expelled and they move from Rome to Corinth. They don't hole up in their home or their business and say, us too, no more. Life is too scary. This crazy world with crazy politicians, it's just not safe. Does that sound familiar? I hear a lot of people today saying the same things. That today the world is so bad. The world is so crazy. And this story continues to tell us the world has always been crazy. Crazy politicians like Claudius who make huge decisions that have huge implications for people's lives. And in this crazy time, Priscilla and Aquila invite Paul, a stranger, and a somewhat, honestly, unpopular person with the local people, to work and live with them. And then he invites them to Ephesus, and they leave their livelihood, sail away with him to Ephesus, where he drops them off and says, see ya. And then while they're in a whole new place with a whole new people, they meet Apollos and take him under their wing just to send him back out. Next, they hold church in their home in Ephesus, and eventually we see them again in Rome with another home church. This is what they could have said. Okay, we are victims of our circumstances in Rome. We are victims of Paul leaving us high and dry in Ephesus. We're just going to hunker down, think about ourselves, and try to live good, respectable lives. But they kept giving. In fact, later in Romans 16, 3 through 5, Paul says, greet Priscilla and Aquila, my fellow workers in Christ Jesus. They risked their lives for me. Not only I, but all the churches of the Gentiles are grateful to them. And greet also the church that meets at their house. Priscilla and Aquila's lives were marked by obedience to God. They listened and obeyed what he was asking of them, and it landed them in a place where they risked their very lives. So when is the last time you risked your life for someone? I mean, when is the last time I risked my life for someone, right? Most of us can't say we've ever risked our lives. Some people in this room have risked their lives. We could say we've maybe risked a position or a relationship. We've maybe had some financial risk. Paul commended them for risking their lives for him. But in their moment of risk, I really believe they were just being obedient to what God was asking of them. So this past winter, I had just gotten home from somewhere. It was a very blustery winter day. We had gotten about a foot of snow. I don't know if you guys remember that day this past winter. And as I pulled into my driveway, Craig and Tobin had cleared out the driveway and the sidewalk. And so mine was clear. And so as I was getting out of the car, I could hear like a scrape, right? So I look across the road, and we live like on a little court, but there's like a road, and then there's a couple of houses across the street with our neighbors. And I have never met my neighbor, and this is very sad to say, okay, so it's been 12 years. I have never met my neighbor who was like directly across to the left. And so I just saw this woman out there trying to push about a foot of very wet snow by herself. And so I watched for a minute, and then I just literally heard God say, run across the street and tell her, don't worry about it. You guys will do the snow. So I ran across the street, and she's scraping. Her back is turned to me. So I'm like, hi, I'm your neighbor of 12 years. I mean, we've like seen each other and not even waved for 12 years. That's very sad. It's a very sad thing. But I'm here to say we would love to do your snow. And she just said, no, you don't have to do my snow. And I said, no, we don't have to do anything. We want to do your snow. So I said, I've got my husband, my son, strong guys who are going to come out here and do your snow. It's fine. We have a snow blower that we got last year. It just gives them some extra fun to play with machinery. So don't worry about it. And so she said, thank you so much. And as we sat there, I said, well, I'm Nicole. And she said, I'm Giannina. And she just started telling me a little bit of her story. Now, I want you to know that I assumed that she had gotten divorced a couple of years ago. I saw a moving truck pull up in front of the house, and then it was gone, and that was it, and I've only seen her herself. Well, I was wrong, because what I found out was that during the pandemic, her husband died of cancer, and the moving truck was her only son moving to Wisconsin for a job. And it was interesting to sit there and think, wow, I should not have taken 12 years to say hi to my neighbor. And it was funny because we talked and talked. Honestly, it went to about an hour and a half. She came into our house. She wanted to see our kitchen that was redone. And it just made me realize how grateful I was just for that little moment to hear God speak and obey. So how about for you? How do you move out of your comfort zone? Like, where can we obey God? Move to the uncomfortable. And honestly, most of us have had that moment, even if we're new in our relationship with God, where he says something and it's like I can act or I can't act. These are uncomfortable places, but he's speaking. Honestly, it could be at work. It could be with a coworker. It could be speaking up in a meeting for somebody who can't defend themselves. It might be working in a nonprofit or joining a group here or starting a group in your neighborhood. How does God want you to move out of your comfort zones? Priscilla and Aquila didn't stay comfortable. What could he be up to in your life to give you greater impact? Well, not only did Priscilla and Aquila join the movement, not only did they move out of their comfort zones, but Priscilla and Aquila moved towards others. This week is supposed to be about a statement that one of Kensington's founders has said for years. You probably will recognize it. He says, you can have it all if you give it all away. Now, being a middle-class person raised, honestly, without generational wealth, I think, is this about money? Can I have all the wealth and money I want if I give it all away? And Jesus said in Matthew 16, 24 through 25, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for me will find it. Loses his life. Loses your life. Honestly, this statement is so much greater than money. It's actually about the totality of our lives. It's about the fact that if I'm willing to follow Jesus, I can have an amazing life, an unbelievable adventure that money can't buy. And for Priscilla and Aquila, when I think about the all in that statement, you can have it all if you give it all away, what it makes me think and see is that their greatest assets weren't their physical possessions, which they could have had a lot of or a little, we really don't know. But what we see from Priscilla and Aquila is because they were willing to be obedient to God's promptings in their lives and they were committed to relationship, their relational bank account was full. They would work with, listen to, be inspired by, and minister with the great apostle Paul. He invited them to this big journey and they worked with him and are mentioned in the Bible as his friends. They would go on to teach Apollos the scriptures so that he could more clearly deliver the good news of Jesus to the places and people he would travel to. They would start churches and progress the future of the church and pour into people so that we are standing here today in their footsteps. So I ask all of us, can we be a Priscilla or an Aquila? Boundaries. Oh, that word. Who loves the word boundaries? I love the word boundaries. It's literally my favorite word. I think people sometimes are like, stop talking about boundaries. I literally can talk for days about healthy boundaries with people because I think so many people struggle with healthy boundaries. But I do think somewhere we have literally put our whole house and lives on lockdown, claiming boundaries, even our homes. Yes, boundaries are necessary. Yes, boundaries are healthy. Yes, some people need more of them. But, but we have used this as an excuse, honestly, to distance ourselves from people and not open our homes. Recently, a story came into Kensington. Craig came home and told me there was a couple who had come here from Europe. And they had brought their family over here thinking this would be a great adventure for their family. And they wrote the church to say that though they loved the church, they were leaving the U.S. to go back to Europe because they said that Americans don't want to make new friends. They said, we're too busy. We appear to have all the relationships that we need or want. Can you imagine, seriously, if this was how Priscilla and Aquila or the early church behaved? I mean, this is one of the simplest things in the world. Open your heart to new friends. A great opportunity to invite people into your life, to see God's goodness and get onto a journey with Jesus. And it does start with us. Last week, we were at a dinner. Some of you might be in this room. And we were talking about the next leg of the journey for Kensington, what's next for us in this next season. And one of the things we were talking about is how complicated it seems like things have gotten to get involved and to be with people in the church. And we were even talking about the next generation, which is my kids' generation, Gen Z. And I'll tell you that their lives, they have a lot of complicated things, a lot of technology that I can't figure out, okay? But it's weird how they want simple things. It's like revolutionary to them that like we're gonna sit down and we're gonna have a dinner together. In fact, my kids' friends, a couple of my kids' friends said it was so strange to them that our family has dinner together at the dinner table a few times a week. It's revolutionary. And so I would just say that we gotta get back to simple. We have overcomplicated things and we have to get back to simple. So I wanna make an agreement with you on this, okay? Listen, we are gonna shoot low on this. And here's what I'm gonna show you what I mean. I've asked Craig, my handy dandy assistant. Are you paying attention? He had his phone in his hand. Oh, he's been told. This is really, really simple. Can you hold it up? Little Caesar's Pizza. Okay, Little Caesar's Pizza. It is this simple. And it's cold Little Caesar's Pizza, okay? So maybe that's shooting too low. Okay. But here's what I've come to learn. That the lower you set the bar, the easier it is for participation. I'm sure all of us have been invited over to people's houses for dinner, and it is a spread, right? And I don't know, but I just want you to know that a lot of people do not feel comfortable doing that. And so the lower we set this bar, the easier it is for participation. Craig and I went to a dinner when we were first married. We were young marrieds. I could barely make chicken and instant mashed potatoes when we first got married, okay? But don't be too judgmental. I was 20, and my mom was not a great cook, so don't be too judgmental. But we went on our honeymoon, and we met this couple, and they invited us for dinner. Now, we go to their house. They are full-blooded Italian people. She has cooked for 2 days for us. And she has made a 5-course meal. But Craig didn't realize that she'd made a 5-course meal. And in my head, I said, pace yourself. But in his head, he just thought more, okay? And so she starts with like this big piece of lasagna, and Craig's just like scarfing it in. And because Craig still eats as one, like the oldest of 7, right? So he just thinks he wants more. So he eats this piece of lasagna, and she says, do you want another piece? Now, I know there's more coming, but Craig's like, yes, I do. So he starts eating another piece. I'm not kidding you guys. Like, it was like he was seeing green by the time we left. And I was trying to kick him under the table and like try to give him a cue, but it didn't work. But as we were leaving, I said to him as like we're walking down the sidewalk, I'm like, I am never cooking for them. Not ever. We have to take them out for dinner. Listen, growing up, you ate some of this? Well, I was going to give this away, but this is really sad now. Okay.
Setting the bar low.
This is really setting the bar low, so this is not my suggestion, okay? Okay, growing up, Craig McLaughlin says, all right, okay. Growing up, my parents would always have one of these on their counters. This was like my mom's, on Friday she'd go grocery shopping, she always bought a coffee cake. It was usually an Entenmann's coffee cake, right? And we were not allowed to touch it, unlike Craig, because I was going to give this away to somebody, but oh well. Okay. We weren't allowed to eat it until the weekend had passed, because it was an opportunity if a neighbor stopped by to have a cup of coffee and a piece of coffee cake. And I think that's what I mean by setting the bar low. We're all capable. In fact, honestly, in relationship with people, it takes the pressure off because it really is about the relationship and not about what we're serving. It's the KISS principle, right? Keep it simple, stupid. When we keep things simple, it sets the tone for what other people think they need to do or have to do to be in relationship with us. And I know parties are fun. Everyone loves to be spoiled. Everybody loves to spoil people. But it's unnecessary for us to develop meaningful relationships. So my challenge for you is this, straight from the lives of Priscilla and Aquila. I'd like you to reach out to someone this week. Someone who you know is alone, needs Jesus, someone who you just see and God says go. Someone God has even touched your heart about before and you just didn't listen. And simply, and I do mean keep it simple, it might be a phone call. Invite them into a couple hours with you. This is how we give our lives away, one person at a time. Listen, Paul needed a job and friends on his journey. I'm sure he was lonely. Apollos needed teaching. People in Ephesus and Rome needed a place to be in a church family. Priscilla and Aquila trusted God, obeyed his promptings, and gave their lives away. Remember, trust, obey, give your life away. That's what it's all about. I'm going to pray. Jesus, you are so good to us. We are grateful to be in this place. God, I pray that you would help us to see the movement that you are doing in the world around us. Help us to get out of our comfort zones. Help us to trust you and to move into those uncomfortable places and help us to move towards people. God, you have commissioned your church to move out. Help us to take our place. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hey, wait, 1 minute. Come back with me for a second. Can I just say, Nicola's a good friend of mine, and she is one of the most passionate people about the Word of God, and she walks the walk, and I think she was a huge blessing to us today and just a great reminder. So, one more time. Thank you. All right, come on. And these are my other friends. I have 3 friends, give or take. This is Dominic, and this is Athena, and they're going to tell you something in just a moment. I want to tell you why we're up here. So as we were talking about Priscilla, the tent maker, we were thinking, wow, we want to tell everybody what we're doing back in K-Kids. And one of the things that we're doing is we're partnering with the House of Hope, which is a ministry that launched out of this church several years ago. So part of it, it's a mobile home estate that's actually located right behind the building. There's also one now in Oxford, and we're launching one in Clarkston. And this group lives among some children who are underprivileged. So what we wanted to do in K-Kids, in learning to be generous, is we decided we were going to collect some of our offerings and buy a tent so that the kids could go camping. So, Alicia, if you want to throw that up real quick so that they can see what we're talking about. So these are some of our friends from House of Hope. And the kids here found a way to create an opportunity for them to go. And the reason that we're doing that is we're teaching on generosity, because we believe that when a child learns what it's like to share what they have, it develops compassion, kindness, and empathy, just to be thinking about other people. So today I brought up my friend Dominic and Athena, and they're going to tell you a little bit. Athena, you're going to work with me here? Okay, cool. All right, they're going to tell you a little bit. Like, Athena, I want to hear from you. What are some of the things you've been doing so that you can bring in some offering for the House of Hope?
I've been feeding the cats and cleaning their little boxes.
Yeah, that's a lot. Cleaning the litter box, feeding the cats. You know, it's simple things. It's exactly what Nicole said. It's just these little things that make such a big difference. Dominic, for you, why do you think it's important to share what you have and to be generous?
So that we can spread the love of Jesus.
That's right. Very good. Wow, that was a really big answer, and I love it. So, you know, just so that you know, like, these are some of the things that we're working on back there in the kids area. And honestly, I am just super proud to be a part of it. It's an amazing program. Our kids are difference makers. And I love what Nicole said today about just that being available. Another founder, his mom used to talk about something called the ministry of availability. And it's a simple thing. It's just being available in a conversation, being available to clean the litter box and feed the cats so that you can raise some funds to help somebody else. It's such simple little things. So we just wanted to share a little bit about that with you. And we want to thank you for being a part of this with us. Good job, guys. So, speaking of availability, we've got Matthias and the gang here, and they're going to lead us in a song called Available, which fits very perfect. So I hope you'll take a moment and just kind of absorb the words of this song and think about, what does that mean? We are available. Thanks, everybody.
I'll follow where your spirit leads. Broken as my life may be, I will give you every piece. I hear you call. I am available. I say yes, Lord. I am available. Here I am with open hands, counting on your grace again. Less of me and more of you. I just wanna see you move. I hear you call. I am available. I say yes, Lord. I am available. I hear Nothing is a sacrifice. Use me how you want to, God. Have you thrown within my heart? I hear you call. I am available. I say yes, Lord. I am available. Use me how you want to, I stand before you now. The greatness of your now. I have heard of the majesty and wonder of you, King of heaven. In humility I bow as your love, and wave after wave crashes over me, crashes over me. For you are for us, you are not against us. Champion of heaven, you made a way for
Dang it, Joyce, every time. Dang. So I want to tell you real quick story. Years ago, Nicole made me think of this morning. I had planted a church before I came to Kensington. Kensington helped us get that church started. And I remember early on when you're starting something, some of you've had your own startup, and so you know this. I mean, you've got wild dreams, you've got big vision, and you've got no resources. And so most of what I got really good at early on was convincing people to come work for us for peanuts. And we didn't have a Matthias back then, and so we knew we needed somebody like him to be a part of the team, but we also knew we didn't have the resources for it. And I'll never forget sitting down with a buddy of mine that I'd been friends with for a few years, and we had joked about working together, and I said, hey, here's the deal. If you want to come work for me, I've got a full-time job and no pay. And so we would laugh all the time, ha, 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 ha. So one time he calls me up, he's like, hey, let's grab breakfast. It's been a while, let's catch up. So we're eating breakfast, and he goes, hey, I want to take you up on your offer. And I go, which offer? He goes, the job. And I go, I was dead serious, like full-time job, no pay. And he goes, no, I assumed you were serious. He goes, I want the job. I was like, I don't understand the no pay part, or you don't understand no pay part. And this is what he said to me, I'll never forget it. It stuck with me, it has challenged me ever since. And I think it's a part of what maybe even eventually drove people like Priscilla and Aquila. Even if they weren't trying to do this, it became part of the echo of their life. My friend looked at me and he said, he goes, my wife and I have been talking, and we're not 100% sure how we're gonna do it. We gotta make a lot of changes. It's gonna be a challenge. And this is what he said. I don't wanna get to the end of my life, look Jesus in his eyes, and tell him that my faith in him and my Christian walk never cost me anything. And he says, and as I look back over the course of my life, it really hasn't. He goes, I feel like God's asking me to take this step, and I want it to cost me something. And I said, great, we'll sign a 12-year contract. So, and we eventually were able to start to pay him. Still, I don't think he ever finished with us with more than a few peanuts, but he made that decision early on, and he made an unbelievable impact in what we were doing. We would not have been shaped in the early days in the way that impacted so many different people had it not been for him being a part of what we were doing, had it not been for him saying, I'm gonna take a step into some pretty risky business. I don't know how it's gonna work. I feel God's nudging me, and I'm just gonna say yes. I'm gonna let it cost me. So maybe your step is a super simple step, like Nicole said this morning. Maybe it's the step of having somebody over for a Danish, which, by the way, you did not tell me I couldn't eat that. And I was not the only culprit. It was your daughter and I both snacking on it before service. Or maybe it's a Little Caesars pizza. I mean, can you risk $5 in a couple hours of your night to have a neighbor over, a friend over, a coworker over? Like, that's where the impact happens. If we want to be difference makers, you will only ever have your greatest impact in relationships, so move towards them. And take the step, even if it's the most simple of steps. Take the step. So this evening, just to let you know, as you get out of here today, hope you can come back after second service. Everything in the next couple minutes is gonna start getting set up out there. We've got bounce houses, we're grilling food, we've got all kinds of things to do. Would love just to have you come back and hang out with us for a little bit. This evening, because of the summer schedule of our high school and junior high groups, this evening is not a meeting night for our high school and junior high. They will be back next week. However, I do want to throw this at you, and this is one very simple difference maker option for us, an opportunity for us. Our junior high students are going away this week to what we call mixed camp. So they're going to be away for the entire week. They're staying up at Hope College, and the whole point of this is, if you've ever been on anything like this as an adult, as a student, getting away, like these are the moments where so much different work that God does to form us happens in these away trips. And so that's happening with our junior hires in an effort to continue to really help them grow in their walk with the Lord, help them grow in their understanding of who Jesus has made them to be and how he's made them to have an impact in this world as well. So here's my challenge to all of us. These are the names of every single one of our junior high students that are going on this trip. I would love for you to snap a picture of that and take this home with you. And throughout the week, I want you to just pray through these names. Maybe you do every single one. Maybe you pick out a couple every couple of hours, or every day you pick out a few. You do it how it seems to work best for you. But I would love it if a simple step of us being difference makers is to pray for the younger difference makers that are going to be away this week and how God wants to meet with them and how God's going to continue to grow them. So can we do that together as a church? Great, 4 of us are going to do it. Super excited about that. So take the picture. We'll leave it up for just a second. And let's just pray for our students as they're away this week. Next week, we're starting a brand new series. I'm excited. I'm going to be kicking us into a series. It's going to take us a couple weeks through a book that probably is not necessarily one that we've read through before or anytime recent. The book of Thessalonians, also written by Paul, was written to a church in the region of Thessalonica, and his both praise of them and challenge of them is maybe, I think in many ways, as timely when he wrote it then to the church as it is to us here where we live today in 2023. So thanks so much for being with us this morning. Hope to see some of you back after 11 for our barbecue. We've got a prayer team that's going to be up here. If we can pray for you before you leave this morning, please let us do that. Also, some of them are at the table out in the lobby and would love to do that as well. Have a great rest of the Sunday and the week, and we'll see you next weekend.
It was an amazing
service.
Nicole.
Amazing
I loved
service,
how she
yeah.
talked about how in our workplace we can still have influence we may think that's reserved for people who are professional Christians like us, you know?
Yep. Oh,
But I
yeah,
love
like
how
us,
she
the
was-
professional
I love how she
Christians.
was actually talking about just her own experience and her calling and just weaving that into the scriptures. A fantastic message today.
Absolutely
Loved it.
amazing. Just because, we all are called to that. It's not just us that get to be on a staff at a church or do something, because we're not professional Christians by any means, but we all get to step into that. And what was the saying? Trust, obey, and give your life away.
Love
the
it.
idea of just trusting, saying yes, being obedient, and then just giving your life away and all of that. So good.
Love
so
it.
good. Awesome.
Well, hey, we're excited. We want to invite you back to this
Wednesday. Yeah.
What's going on?
We have baptisms, which is amazing. If you still would like to sign up, if you are at home today or you're going to see this later, sign up. We still have time to sign up for that. And then we're having some barbecue.
Barbecue.
So,
you don't want to miss that. I mean, it's just you
don't
need
know
to
what we're
savor
having.
these summer days.
but we need to enjoy them.
It goes by quick. I know. It's going to be August.
By the time we get there.
So thank you so much
good.
for joining us. And if you want to hang around and see us again, we'll be here at 11 a.m. Take care.
Sounds great, guys. Bye-bye.